بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صاحب السعادة الدكتور عبد الحسين بن علي ميرزا الموقر، رئيس هيئة الطاقة المستدامة بمملكة البحرين، راعي هذا الملتقى. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، ضيوفنا الكرام، أسعد الله صباحكم بكل خير. يسعدني أن أرحب بكم جميعاً في حفل الافتتاح الرسمي للملتقى الدولي الثاني للطاقة المستدامة. واختصاراً للوقت، اسمحوا لي أن أقدم فقرات برنامج حفلنا هذا باللغة الإنجليزية. Your Excellency, Dr. Abdul Hussain bin Ali Mirza, President, Sustainable Energy Authority in the Kingdom of Bahrain, event patron. Your Excellencies, honored guests, it is our privilege to welcome you all to the opening ceremony of the second annual International Sustainable Energy Event 2021, organized by the Sustainable Energy Authority and the Bahrain Society of Engineers. With the pandemic widespread across the world, we have seen unprecedented disruptions in the way businesses have been conducted. Time and time again, we have faced difficulties, but our resilience to move forward through the challenges has given us the edge. It is more important to connect and share knowledge of the challenges and opportunities created by the pandemic. It is our responsibility to thrive and bring to you the most efficient and safe platform to connect with the experts and peers. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, I'm honored to welcome the patron of the event, His Excellency Dr. Abdul Hussain bin Ali Mirza, President, Sustainable Energy Authority in the Kingdom of Bahrain, to deliver the opening address on this occasion. Please join me in welcoming His Excellency.
Thank you very much, Mariam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Excellencies, Your Excellency Sheikh Nawaf bin Ibrahim Al Khalifa, Chief Executive of the Electricity and Water Authority, Dr. Dhiya Abdul Aziz Tawfiqi, President of Bahrain Society of Engineers, Mr. Fuad Sheikh, Chairman of the Organizing Committee, Mr. Stefano Pettinato, the UNDP Resident Representative, distinguished guest speakers and exhibitors, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to all of you wherever you may be joining us from. 2 years ago, I opened the first IC event in a large hall surrounded by over 500 attendees. None of us could have predicted the challenges we would each face between that day and today. In spite of the many challenges which presented themselves, as a community, the sustainable energy industry has stood tall and become central to the global COVID-19 recovery. The world now understands more than ever that sustainability must be at the core of all our actions. Energy is no exception, making this the second International Sustainable Energy event all the more important. And I'm glad to announce that we have more than 800 registered participants from 27 countries for this event. While I regret we are unable to welcome you all in person and to offer the same hospitality as the previous event, I am so pleased that with our sponsors' support, the hard work of the Bahrain Society of Engineers and the team at the Sustainable Energy Authority here in the Kingdom of Bahrain, we are able still to host expert speakers from all over the globe and deliver their knowledge and insights directly to you in the safety and comfort of your own homes and offices. Today, I would like to share with you a presentation of some of the latest global trends, followed by regional developments, and then offer some insights into the Kingdom of Bahrain's recent successes in the context of sustainable energy. So I have a presentation. I like to start by saying that Bahrain is a member of the International Renewable Energy Agency, which has its headquarters in Abu Dhabi. And I am honored by the government of Bahrain that I can represent Bahrain in the General Assembly of the International Renewable Energy Agency. The last one I attended was on 18th of January 2021, which was virtual. This General Assembly this time was attended by 1,700 delegates, and each group of delegate is headed by head of the delegate, and that head of delegate is given opportunity to tell the others what are the latest in the renewable energy arena around the world. So today I like to summarize to you the findings from the latest International Renewable Energy Agency. The first thing to note was that the number of member states in IRENA has increased to 163 countries, with 21 countries pending. Now, when Bahrain joined in 2009, there were only 75 countries. So you can see almost every country now is joining the International Renewable Energy Agency. The overwhelming consensus now towards a strategy of energy transition to sustainable clean energy. Now, energy transition was not mentioned only by the country's delegates, but also by the international oil companies, by the consultants, and by the NGOs. So that's the key word now forward. Investments in 2020 up to 2020 for renewables reached $820 billion US. And IRENA predicts that in the next 2 years only, it will reach $2 trillion US. So you can see the jump in the investment. 50% of power generation installed in 2020 was solar, exceeding all other generation technologies. Over 60% of the global economy will have zero carbon emission targets, including China and USA. Now, China has a target of zero carbon emissions by 2060, and USA, for the first time under the Biden regime, will have a zero carbon emissions by 2050. Now, these are the two most pollutant countries, and they now all have zero carbon emissions. Green hydrogen is focused for sectors which are difficult to decarbonize, shipping and transport. Europe have increased their zero carbon targets for 2030 from 40 to 55%. Investors and the finance sector are pushing international companies to adopt energy transition. In actual fact, some of the bankers at the IRENA were saying in future, they will insist on a clause in any big loans they give to projects that there should be protection of the environment. Many countries have now targets for banning gasoline and diesel in cars. This is an example of that. So Norway will ban gasoline and diesel in cars by 2025 in just 4 years. Britain, Denmark, Holland, Ireland, Germany by 2030, and France by 2040. In Germany, they even give 6,000 cash rebate in euros for the electric cars. Now, some people say, but these countries don't have fossil fuel like we have in the Gulf. But that's not true. Norway, for example, produces around 2,200 barrels a day of crude and have a large reserve. But I will show you later, they have 100 target, which they have just reached. Twenty-four countries have announced, additional countries have announced zero carbon emission target dates. A few years back, it was only the Scandinavian countries. Now you can see the numbers are increasing. The USA have established a target of 100% clean energy by 2035 in their electricity network. Imagine the USA is a continent, it's one of the largest electricity consumers, and they plan to have 100% clean energy by 2035. That's a very, very challenging target. Saudi Arabia, as you know, His Majesty, the King Salman of Saudi Arabia, in the last G20 announced that 50% of their electricity will be from solar and wind, and he specified solar and wind. Costa Rica is already 100% clean energy on the grid, and there are 7 other countries who have 100% targets. So Iceland is 100%, Paraguay is 100%, Costa Rica 100%, Norway was 98.5, now it is 100%, Austria 80%, Brazil. So all these countries each year now will increase. Now, this is a very important announcement, which Allianz Reinsurance, which is one of the biggest reinsurance companies in the world, they said that they will not insure fossil fuel-based assets by 2050. This has lots of implications for the new power stations that we build in the Gulf or in the world. Because if you build a new power station, say in 2021, the agreement normally is with the consortium who builds the power station is for 20 to 25 years. But the power station will last much more than that. For example, we have Sitra Power Station, which was commissioned in 1976. So it's more than 45 years ago. And the difference here between where we are and 250 is only 30 years. So we have to be very careful that in future, if we build new power stations, it shouldn't be fossil fuel based because nobody will reinsure it. Now, Allianz is the first one who have started this. Imagine there are others who's going to join according to what we heard in the conference. Norway has one of the largest pension fund money. So they diverted $1 trillion from fossil fuel to clean energy in March 2019. Although they themselves are a fossil fuel country. This chart is from IRENA. It shows share of electricity generating capacity. Blue is from fossil fuel, orange is from renewable. So the share of electricity generating capacity for blue fossil fuel was more than renewable until 2016. From 2016 onwards, you can see the share of renewable is increasing. And this is only up to 2019. We will see what happens in 2020. Now that was just to give you an idea of what's happening global. Now we come to our region. Let's look at the GCC energy transition or energy transition period. All the GCC countries now have national targets. 15 years ago, hardly any one of them had a national target. Now you can see, for example, Saudi Arabia, which has the second largest crude reserve in the world. They have 266 billion barrels of crude, which lasts for 100 years. And they announced that 50% of their electricity generation by 2030 will be from solar and wind. Dubai, for example, in UAE said that they will have a target of 75% of electricity generation by 2050. Now, these target dates, by the way, every time we update them, they bring them forward. In other words, the pace of going to renewable is increasing faster each year. So that is now the global and regional. Now let's come to Bahrain. Bahrain, in December 2013, the cabinet of Bahrain approved a dedicated center for renewable and energy efficiency with two main objectives. One of them was to increase investment and use of renewables. The other one is improve the energy efficiency. The cabinet approved this memorandum, which I submitted at that time, and we joined together as partnered with UNDP to establish the center. And we initially called it Sustainable Energy Unit, SEU. Then His Majesty upgraded the SEU and to SEA, Sustainable Energy Authority, in October 2019. The renewable. So in the past, all the square was blue. Now it will be a mixture of blue and renewable, orange. And the share of renewable as years go by will increase. Now, we are not saying we have a zero carbon emission in Bahrain because we have fossil fuel and we still have new discoveries and so on. But we will have a mixture of two, like in Saudi Arabia. Rami? Now, SEA suggested national targets to the government to the cabinet. The reason we call them national targets, because there were no national targets in Bahrain. Each ministry was working in isolation and each authority was working in isolation. So we said we want to have a national target with a national strategy so that this represents Bahrain, not SEA or EWA or NOGA or Ministry of Finance. It is a national. So these are the national targets approved by the cabinet. Energy efficiency 6% by 2025 and renewable 5% by 2025, which means 250 megawatt of clean energy starting from zero, increase to 10% by 2035, which means 710 megawatt of clean energy. To make sure we achieve these targets, we prepared two national plans, National Renewable Energy Action Plan and National Energy Efficiency Action Plan. They contain the policies and the projects we have to do to achieve the national targets, and they are the roadmaps for that. Now, again, this is a national plan and it was approved by the cabinet. It's not the plan of SEA. It's a national plan. and the cabinet to make sure that this is national and it is followed by every ministry. They established a national committee to follow up. The national committee is currently headed by President of Sustainable Energy Authority, reporting to the cabinet through the executive committee. And it has membership, as you can see, from all the stakeholders. So from Prime Minister's Court, SEA, EWA, oil, transport, housing, finance, environment, industry and commerce, work municipalities, and economic development board. We meet once every 2 months to make sure we implement what are in the plans. Because of this structured organization, and thanks to the effort of the people in the IFC and the ministries involved, Bahrain has managed to achieve more than 70% of the national targets to date. Now, just quickly, the National Renewable Energy Action Plan has 3 policies. The first one is net metering, the second one is government rooftop solar projects, and the third one to make it mandatory in the future for any building, any new building or project to have a certain percentage renewable in it. We have implemented one 1st of January 2018 and implemented part of 2, and we are in the process. Number 3, the mandatory is in the optional and the green building code, which we prepared with Ministry of Works. There are 7 projects you can see here. Each one of these is subdivided into sub-projects, and in total, we have calculated for each one of them how much megawatts it will produce. So if we add all of them, we get the target at the top of 250 megawatt, which is 5%. And I'll show you in a minute how much of this has been approved. That was the National Renewable Energy Action Plan. We come to National Energy Efficiency Action Plan. The target is 6% by 2025. And there are 22 initiatives in the plan. These initiatives, as you can see, are like changing the air conditioning specification, the lighting, the home appliances, preparing a green building code, which we have already done, labeling the buildings, water conservation. We have a Water Resources Council, district cooling. We have prepared the regulations, industry program. We agreed with all the companies. Government lighting has to be LED, street lighting, EWA are changing all of them to LED, and the next stage, I hope, will be solar. Government buildings, energy management, we have agreement. SEA has agreement with 4 ESCO companies who do energy auditing, and we have done it for some companies and ministries. Green procurement, all the purchases of the government are done through the Ministry of Finance, and the Ministry of Finance is representative, is part of the committee, which I chair as a follow-up committee. And we are preparing now a green procurement manual or code, which means in future, most of the purchases will be environmental friendly. Number 13, vehicle efficiency. Ministry of Industry and Commerce now have a specification for electric cars. And I talked to His Excellency, the Minister of Industry, and he suggested that I should, through SEA, prepare a strategy for the electric cars, because we suggested that. Transport, under this strategy, we'll say where are the charging points, who will be administering it, etc. And we will take into account the points of view of all the ministries. Transport subsidy, this is when the gasoline prices went up. Electricity production efficiency, for example, the new Abdul 2 power station, which Sheikh Nawaf, I'm sure, is very proud of, is using the latest gas turbines, so they save energy. Transmission, of course, we have 400 kV power factor correction. We advise, we have almost everybody puts capacitor. smart metering, all the newest meters are smart and the old ones are replaced. Electricity subsidy reform, all of you are aware, in the last 4 years, this has changed. Awareness, we do lots of this, like this international, sustainable energy. Institutional, we have the SEA now. Training, we have trained more than 300 individuals, brought consultants who train them, and they are qualified to install solar energy. Now, these initiatives, for each one of them, SEA has calculated how much saving in physical energy they make and what is the amount. On a conservative basis, it is $600 million saving for the government by 2025. And this, we have the calculation for. And according to our calculations, we have implemented or being implemented 77% to date. So people say, okay, now these, by the way, are not done by SEA. When I say we, I'm talking about the Kingdom of Bahrain. This is done by various, ministries, authorities. EWA plays a great role in this, Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Ministry of Works, Ministry of Finance, all of them, play a great role. But what is the effect of all this? One way to measure the effect is to see what happened to the total electricity consumption in Bahrain. So this chart shows the actual peak load, which is on the left, and it is blue or green, and the forecast, which was in the master plan, or if we assume that there is an increase because of population increase and new buildings. So if we look in 2017, the peak load was 3,527. Now that was before implementation of major part of the Energy Action Plan. So at that time, we said with the increase in population and the new buildings, the forecast for 2018 will be 3,786. But actually it turned out to be 3,437, which is less than actual of 2017 and less than forecast of 2018. We said maybe that's an exception in the year. Let's wait for 2019. Again, it is down 3,443, which is less than 3,527 and less than the forecast. So in 2 years, despite population increase, all the new towns, Khalifa Town, Salman Town, Diyar al-Maharrak, all these new buildings, the electricity has not increased. The peak has not increased. In 2020, it increased slightly because of use of internet because of COVID, but still it is less than the forecast. So that shows that there is an impact now on the total electricity consumption in Bahrain in future. To give you a quick example of how renewable can reduce the cost of electricity for government ministries, we worked with Ministry of Education. They gave us 80 schools as a pilot. We used the rooftop of them, and the tender was awarded to bidders to finance, build, own, operate, and manage the plant for the duration of 20 years in return for a rent like a tariff. In other words, they will do everything, finance, build, operate, everything with a rent. We said the rent should be less than the government tariff, which is 29 fils, because the government charges the schools and ministries 29 fils. So the actual bids we received, and these have been signed now, was 21.752 fils instead of 29 fils, and 19.832 fils instead of 29, and 23 instead of 29. Now that means Ministry of Education has saved 30% of their electricity cost with zero investment. And in this case, Ministry of Electricity delegated SEA to design the tender, prepare terms of reference, prepare PPA, prepare evaluation bids, and do technical negotiations with the bidders. So because of this success, now they want to expand, and we have now requests by 24 ministries and authorities that they want the same thing. In other words, they want to do it on a boom basis. And in all of them, you can see the role of SEAs to design the tender, prepare terms of reference, prepare power purchase agreement, evaluate best technical negotiations. And we have started already with the 4 here, which we will be tendering next month. Now that was how renewable can reduce the cost of electricity. Now we come how renewable can reduce the cost of water. Many of you know by now that there is a company who's doing a pilot project. The company is called Pavilion Water. They have 2 locations for the pilot, which they are doing for the government. One of them is Salman City, one of them is in Abdul. The Abdul one uses these turbines. The reason for the photo is to show you the size of the turbine. You can see this is their own invention, the turbines, and this is not so high as the normal wind turbines. And they use that off-grid to desalinate water, seawater, and the cost is less than 200 fils per cubic meter of water, because they have finished now the pilot project, they are testing it. And they do also take TSE water, which is sewage affluent water, and also convert it to class 4. All this cost is less than 200 fils, which is, of course, if you compare it with what goes in the invoice now for the customers, is less than 50% of the cost of that. So far, how much we have of the total approved or implemented? I'm not saying all this has been implemented, and this is being done by different ministries, by different private sectors. But if you look at it, we have 100 megawatts solar power plant, which is being administered by EWA, and there is a private consortium. The cabinet has approved it, so we assume that it will be taking place. Rooftop solar projects, His Highness the Crown Prince approved now phase 2 of the government rooftops. We have 535 buildings. The rooftop can generate 50 megawatt. We have already showed you example. Developer projects on a very conservative basis. They say they have 25 megawatt of projects on hand, but actually they have more than 100. EWA has 5 megawatt project, pilot project. Awali was the first one, 5 megawatt. Tatweer 4 megawatt. King Hamad Hospital 4 megawatt. St. Christopher 1.25. Sheikh Hamoza 1 megawatt. BDF 532 kilowatt. And Avenues 254 kilowatt. American Mission 1 megawatt. So that's 195 megawatt, which is 78% already approved. And we have another 4 years for the 22%. So I'm sure we will achieve the target. Thank you very much for your attention and for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for delivering this